Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Bill Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and I'm pleased to welcome you all to the February 27, 2019 meeting of the Brighton Town Board. I want to particularly thank and congratulate everybody that actually made it here in person on this tough, snowy night. Thank you very much. Government in the sunshine has always been our philosophy, even in the snowshine. So we try very hard to keep our open government philosophy, and by being here tonight, you're part of that. But you don't have to be here in person to watch us, to participate, to follow what we're doing. These meetings are live streamed. They're also broadcast on Spectrum, channel 1303, so you can watch us live, and we welcome that participation. Let's start with our pledge to the flag. I'm going to ask Councilmember Warner to lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a couple quick housekeeping announcements. As I mentioned, we are broadcast on Spectrum Cable Channel 1303, our community access channel. If you should experience any problem with the live broadcast, either with the audio or the video, please contact Spectrum. Their number is 756-5000. 756-5000 if you have any trouble with the live broadcast of tonight's town board meeting. Now, if you are watching us streaming at home or wherever, you can get all of the same material and follow along with us. All of tonight's agenda and all the supporting materials, including the proposed resolutions, can be found on our webpage. If you're here in the room, they're on that back table, all the same materials that we have. I do want to mention as well that if you hear the emergency alarm system, and you will know it if you hear it, please exit this room and exit the building immediately. If you would like, you can go out the door to my right, marked with the exit sign, turn right, go down the stairs, out the back door of Town Hall and away from the building. Or you can leave through either of the double doors at the rear of this room, go through the lobby, out the front door, down the steps, and again, away from the building. We don't expect that'll happen, but just in case, we want everybody to stay safe. We do, as always, start with our open forum, which will begin in just a moment. But if you're watching remotely, you can also participate in the open forum by calling 303-3060. That's 303-3060. Someone will take your call, your comment, your question, and relay that to us. If you are deaf or hard of hearing, you can call our TDD line at 784-5205. Again, 784-5205 is our TDD line. Welcome your calls. If you're here in the room and would like to participate in the open forum, I would note that if you're here for one of the two public hearings, either the proposed firearm storage and safety local law or the parking restrictions for Elmwood Avenue at Wintergreen Way local law, and you'd like your comments to be included in the record of the public hearing, I would encourage you to wait until we call those public hearings. They're right at the front part of tonight's agenda, so you won't have to wait long. But if you would like to speak with the board about any other matter, now's your time. Is there anyone that would like to address the board during the open forum? Judy, did you want to talk about? Yeah, one more time. Come on up. Sunday.
4 days.
4 days. Plenty of time.
You're right. I've done the shopping. No, last call for Brighton Neighbors United Supper this Sunday, March 3rd, 6 o'clock, town Buckland Park. If you want a reservation, please call me, 585-442-5111, and I'll see that you get one. It's a potluck supper. And our program is the story of one of the lost boys who was resettled here in Rochester. So that's it. But this is it. I mean,
Thank you every
this is
year
it.
for organizing.
Yeah,
that
it's,
great event.
I don't know, it's been many. It's been many, 20,
I was going to say
25.
20 years easily.
Oh, easily, yeah. So, okay.
Job well done. Thank you. Anybody else like to address the board during the open forum? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. We'll now go to public hearings. And we do have 2 public hearings tonight. The first one is on the proposed firearms storage and safety local law. Dan, was the necessary legal notice given in this matter?
Yes, Supervisor, we were published in the February 21st edition of the Post.
Thank you very much. And I declare this public hearing to be open. Before we start, I do want to note that we did have a public hearing on this matter as well at our last meeting. And for the record, I would like the record of that public hearing, as well as any documents that were submitted, to be incorporated in the record of tonight's public hearing. And with that, is there anyone that would like to address the board concerning this proposed local law?
Bill, before you start
Oh,
that,
yeah,
perhaps
let's have-
perhaps it'd be a good idea to have
Absolutely.
Councilmember Werner talk a little bit about what this proposed local law does.
The floor is yours, Chris. My apologies.
Thanks. And folks, thanks for your interest in this, I think, important issue. Massachusetts is the only state that restricts gun storage and mandates gun storage under lock and key in the home. And we see a significant difference in their experience, especially when it deals with the issue of suicide. If I may, I'd like to read in, once again, my prepared statement along those lines. Our constitutional right to bear arms has rapidly expanded to the point that guns have become of the essence of our national culture. The overwhelming number of guns and the number of households with guns has multiplied manyfold and has proven to be a threat to the safety of our communities and, most importantly, our children. For good or ill, guns will always be a part of our national character. Yet we can and must act to promote responsible gun ownership to reduce the risk they pose. To this end, I propose that we enact this local law to address safe storage of guns and reporting of missing guns. This will mandate that when guns are not in the immediate control of their owner, that they be properly secured, and that missing guns be immediately reported to the Brighton Police Department. The rationale for this are the statistics, which are stunning. A gun in the home is 43 more times likely to be used to kill a friend or family member than a burglar or a criminal. Gun death rates are 7 times higher in states with the highest compared with the lowest household gun ownership, and the risk of homicide is 3 times higher in homes with firearms. More than 500,000 guns are lost or stolen every year in the U.S. A third of U.S. homes with children have guns, and 78 children and young adults under the age of 21 are killed or injured by guns each day, of which 12 will be fatalities. To the age of 24, there are 18 fatalities a day. And 89% of accidental shooting deaths among children occur in the home. Among gun-owning parents who report that their children have never handled their firearms at home, 22% of the children, when questioned separately, said that they had handled them. 73% of children under age 9 and under living in homes with guns reported knowing the location of their parents' firearms, and 36% admitted that they'd handled them. Of homes with children and firearms, 55% were reported to have one or more firearms in an unlocked place, and of those, 43% reported keeping guns without a trigger lock. And one statistic that's particularly shocking and frightening is that a 3-year-old has been found to be capable and strong enough to fire a handgun. And that image is very harsh when you consider that they do it with their thumbs, and the weapon is pointed at themselves. Youth suicide is the most disturbing risk, guns being the most effective method of suicide. Generally, keeping a firearm in the home increases the risk of suicide by a factor of 3 to 5 and increases the risk of suicide with a firearm by a factor of 17. In 2010, 62% of gun deaths were suicides, and 50% of all suicides are committed with a firearm. Among teens living in homes with guns, 40% of those with serious suicide risk factors. Roughly 40% have attempted suicide in the past and reported having easy access to guns in their homes. And of youths who have committed suicide with firearms, 82% obtained those firearms from their home and usually their parents. When storage status was noted, about 2/3 had been stored unlocked. And of the remainder, the youth knew the combination or where the key was kept or simply broke in. But as I mentioned, most striking are the statistics in Massachusetts, which is the only state in the nation that requires firearms to be stored in a locked container or with a locking device when not in use. And the benefits are clear. Of youth suicides in Massachusetts, guns are just used in 9%, compared to 39% of suicides nationally. And the overall suicide death rate among youth in Massachusetts is 35% below the national average. So though safe storage and reporting may have little impact on the national tragedy and disgrace of horrific mass shootings, it will have a tremendous impact on the majority of gun deaths that simply result from irresponsible gun ownership. Let us join Massachusetts and in New York, the cities of only Rochester and Albany, and in Westchester County, and too few municipalities elsewhere in the nation, to enact safe gun storage and reporting legislation. We can wait no longer for New York to act.
Thank you, Chris. And I believe we do have a hard copy of that
Yes, I do.
for the record. Now I will ask, is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board concerning this proposed legislation? Jim, come on up. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to be here this evening. And Chris, thank you for bringing this interesting law and proposal before us. Let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm Jim Weller. I live over on Kirk Drive, which is in the far eastern side of town. I've come to Town Hall on many occasions before to speak about many problems. But when I come to Town Hall to speak about a problem, I always bring a solution with me, because that's the only right thing to do. Tonight, no exception. I'm here to talk about the problem with the proposed safe gun ordinance, and yes, I brought a few proposed solutions. First, I want to give you some background information about me. I first started using a firearm when I was about 8 years old at a firing range at a local YMCA, where we were taught how to handle and use and safely store a firearm. By the time I was 12, I was regularly hunting small game in the fields and woods near my home. In high school, I was a member of the rifle team, which in 1959 won the NRA National Scholastic Championship. We were the best shots with a .22 in the country in our age group. In 1962, New York State Supreme Court Judge John Lomenzo, after an exhaustive background check, granted me a New York State concealed carry pistol permit, which I've had for the past 55 years. In college, I regularly went to the shooting range. I also hunted varmints and big game as time allowed, and which I still do to this day. My involvement with firearms got very serious in 1966 as soon as I got off the bus with 50 other young men at the U.S. Army Basic Training Center in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. The sergeant lined us all up, and then he marched up and down in front of us with his helmet in his hand. And he said, "Gentlemen, if you've got any weapons you brought from home, put them in the helmet, because tonight you're going to get some real weapons, all the weapons you'll ever need." And that night, we started with our firearms training. We started with handguns, rifles, and automatic weapons. And for every hour spent in live fire training, we spent 5 hours of instruction and drill on the safe use and storage of those firearms. These are lessons you never forget. From the YMCA, from the NRA instructors, to the drill instructors and the firing range masters, these are lessons I have lived by and with for all my years. As a Brighton resident for just shy of 50 years, these lessons have served me well as my wife, my 2 children, and my 5 grandchildren. Which brings us to this hearing. The purpose of a law, any law, is somehow to regulate human conduct. As you know, there are basically 2 types of law. The first type of law is commonly called malum per se, which prohibits conduct that is inherently wrong by nature, independent of regulations governing that conduct. An example would be, "Thou shalt not kill." This type of law is distinguished from the second type, which is the malum prohibitum style of law, which is wrong only because something is prohibited by a government edict. An example of this would be, the speed limit on this street is 30 miles an hour, the speed limit on that street is 45 miles an hour. What we are looking at tonight is a malum per se law masquerading as a malum prohibitum law. This proposal is based on the good intention by the drafter, but is not a fundamental requirement of living in a civilized society. The proposal and its logic is very simple. Firearms in a home can cause harm. Let no harm come from a firearm in a home in Brighton. No harm can occur from a firearm if it is unusable. Therefore, make all firearms stored at home unusable in the town of Brighton. That's the essence of this proposal. Wow, well, that's how obvious. Why didn't earlier town boards think of this? Why didn't the New York State Legislature think of this? Why didn't the framers of the Constitution think of this? Because there are many other considerations. I could go on and on about the protections of the Second Amendment and the ramifications of the Section 245 of the New York State Penal Code, but that's a discussion for another day and on another forum. But these are some of the foundation laws of our nation and state, and they should not be disturbed lightly by town boards, no matter how good intention. Instead, let's talk about what's going on here and now in the town of Brighton. In 1967, the Brighton Town Board established an ordinance which prohibited the discharge of a firearm, any firearm, in the town except in justifiable self-defense. With this condition, the town board recognized that bad things do happen and innocent people have the right to defend themselves. Well, what are those bad things, you may ask? The latest Brighton Police Department annual report notes that 212 assaults occurred in 2017, along with 76 breaking and entries and 760 larcenies. That's over 1,000 serious crimes in Brighton in 2017. Not one of those crimes directly involved me, my family, or my home, and I'm thankful for that. But they confirm that our town fathers were right in 1967 when they recognized bad things can and do happen in Brighton. They are a fair warning that one should be alert and be prepared. Some may even say that they justify the crimes, the existence of the Brighton Police Department. Now let's address the specifics of this bill. The cover letter to this bill proposed states in part, in an effort to promote the safe and responsible ownership and possession of firearms, I propose a local law that makes a gun incapable of firing. But I ask, how does this comport with my right of justifiable self-defense? Certainly a good question, I was told, and in response I was asked another question. Can you name one instance when a Brighton homeowner used a firearm to prevent a crime or in justifiable self-defense? My answer was no. I can't prove a negative. I don't know of a single instance that a crime in Brighton was ever prevented by the presence of a firearm in a home. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. I do know that the Brighton Police Department reported 1,000 serious crimes in Brighton in 2017. Maybe there would have been 1,200 serious crimes in Brighton had it not been for the presence of firearms in homes. I don't know, nor does anyone know. And incidentally, this bill does nothing to address the crimes which are the reason to have a usable firearm in the home. Another part of the bill which is troubling is the loose language it incorporates to describe its operation. It says no one who owns a firearm shall leave the firearm out of his immediate possession or control. I don't know what that means. Does it mean if it's not locked up, I must keep it in my pocket or under my pillow or on my nightstand? And what does immediate mean? Burton's legal thesaurus has 2 paragraphs on what immediate may mean. It suggests that immediate means that whenever I lock my front door, I have exclusive and immediate control of the premise. There's nowhere in my 1,900 square foot house I can get to in less than a minute. Is that immediate enough? Is that possession enough? The answer I received to this question was, well, maybe you just have to stand in front of a judge to find out. No, that's not the judge's job to make laws, to legislate, and to clarify a murky law. It's your job to make your laws clear enough they can be readily understood. Clearly, the language in this proposal does not meet that test. And then I asked another question. Can you name one instance where a person, especially a child, was injured by an unattended firearm in Brighton? Great question. While waiting for the answer, I turned again to the BPD report that lists all manner of crimes and violations. There are numerous lines where the incidence of a particular crime is listed as 0. Interestingly, this is not the case for firearm injuries. You say. So this means there were firearm injuries. How many? The answer is not only were there no firearm injuries reported, the answer is this type of incident is so rare in Brighton, there is not even a line on their National Crime Statistics report to report such an incident. I then asked the Brighton Volunteer Ambulance if they had any data on this subject. They reported this is not even a queryable data point. My conclusion is the police and Brighton ambulance service data do not support the proposition that Brighton residents do not store their firearms in a safe and appropriate manner. This proposal is truly a law seeking to correct a problem that doesn't exist here while simultaneously revoking the ability to exercise the right of justifiable self-defense, which does exist and is recognized at all levels of government. To further demonstrate this point, there is currently a bill pending in both the New York State Assembly and Senate defining and regulating the safe storage of firearms in New York State to prevent injury and death, particularly of children from unintentional access. This is a very wide-ranging bill which encompasses everything from antique firearms hanging over a mantle to pistols, rifles, and shotguns. To justify this bill, they devote a long paragraph to data suggesting the lack of safe gun storage harms children. The statistics which they rely on note that in an average year in New York State, 75 children are injured by a firearm requiring hospitalization and 2 die from their injuries. Certainly, this is a tragedy. No one wants to hear of a child being injured by any cause, be it a firearm, an accident, whatever. So let's get focused. The data from our local municipal agencies do not in any way suggest that Brighton gun owners do not store their firearms in an appropriate manner yesterday, the day before yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But just as this proposal as written is a problem, I promised you a solution. If you really want to protect children and not infringe on my rights, amend this proposal to specify it's only applicable in households where children are present. And you can take it another step. Please do. Specify that even when children are not present, Rifles and shotguns, which are used primarily for target practice or hunting, should be securely locked at all times. You don't need to keep a loaded 12-gauge goose gun in your front closet for defense against the squirrels. Just doesn't work in this town. I keep my rifles and shotguns in a gun safe because I drag them out only for target shooting or hunting, someplace other than Brighton. How about that for a suggestion? Children are protected, most guns get locked up, and gun owners can still keep a gun in a usable condition in their home for purposes of self-defense, as recognized by the Constitution, the New York State Legislature, and this town board in its 1967 ordinance. Now I'm going to jump over the table on this one a little bit. If you're really interested in protecting our children and our young adults from death and injury and suicide, let's talk about a real problem in Brighton. According to the 2000 census, Brighton had a population of 35,588 people and 15,854 households, of which there were 8,687 families. This year, Brighton Central School District has 3,486 students. I don't know how many of these families with children have a firearm on their property. Maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 90%. I truly don't know, and I don't think anybody in this room knows. Whatever the number, not one child was reported to have been injured by the improper storage of a firearm, according to the BPD. What I do know is that 48.9% of all Americans, count everybody in this room, 48.9% of all Americans took a prescription drug in the last 30 days, and 99.9% of them are sitting in an unlocked medicine cabinet or on a bedside table at this moment. If you really want to protect our children from danger, give me a local law that says any household with children present must keep all prescription medications under lock and key. According to the U.S. Poison Control Center, 39.1 children out of 1,000 under the age of 6 are subject to poisoning every year. How many children get into mom and dad's pills every day? How many young adults find an opioid in a medicine cabinet and try one out just for a little fun? I don't know, but not a day goes by that doesn't include a broadcast or headline about drug problems impacting the local youth in our community. Is this a problem in my family? Thankfully, no. But last year, someone dumped an unconscious drug addict on the front lawn of a house a few doors down the street. So let's deal with a real and present danger and not an imagined one. Look at us. It's good to say, look at us. We are tough on guns, even though it's not and has never been a problem in this town. In the meantime, somebody's kid just swallowed a pretty pill he found in his mom's purse that looked like an M&M. Please, let's get our priorities straight. Don't try to solve a problem that doesn't exist when the real problem is sitting in your unlocked medicine cabinets. Well, you say, that doesn't apply to me. I'm careful. Yeah, probably, and so apparently are Brighton gun owners. And don't they deserve the same respect for their judgment as you expect us to have for yours? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weller. Would you like to submit your written
I'd be
comments?
delighted to.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the board on this public hearing? Yes, come on up.
Hello, I'm Kelly Kamish, and I am a newer resident to Brighton. About a year and a half ago, my wife and I were looking for homes to buy, and when we were doing a search of the Rochester area, Brighton was our first choice. This is where we wanted to go. We knew we'd be paying higher taxes, but we knew we'd be paying for safety and security, and that is something that was priceless. When I was 15 years old, I lost my mother to gun violence. A person had access to an unlocked gun, a convicted felon, and he chose to take 3 lives. And one of those was my mother. And I don't claim to know a lot about politics or how this is supposed to work, but I do know that when I moved to Brighton because I wanted the security and I wanted the safety. I don't have children, but we moved to Brighton with the idea of this would be a safe place to have children. This would be a place that we would feel comfortable raising our kids. And it shouldn't matter if we have a kid in our home. We have friends who have kids who come to our homes. When we have children, our children will visit homes where there are not other children. And I want to know that there's a law in the books that protects them, so that when I ask, do you have a firearm in your home, somebody will respond, yes, but per the law, it's locked up. It's in a place where a person can't get access to it. I've never owned a gun. I've never actually even touched a gun. I don't know anything about guns and how they work, but I have unfortunately felt the pain that can come from losing somebody to gun violence. And so I stand here in full support of this, not only to keep our children safe, but to keep other people safe from guns that go missing or get stolen. And I think that had a law like this existed where I lived, there may be a potential that I wouldn't have had to lose my mother at 15 years old. That's all I have.
Thank you, and I'm very sorry for your loss and your very personal testimony. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Jeremy.
Thank you, Supervisor. My name is Jeremy Cooney, and I would like to tell a story about Ray Meyering. Ray Meyering was a 6'8" former retired New York State trooper who, when I was 12, placed a firearm in my hands and taught me how to correctly fire. We did that at Boy Scout camp. I was a Eagle Scout number of years later, earning the Rifle Merit Badge, and I had the privilege of learning the importance of gun safety at a very young age. Unfortunately, not every youth has that same experience. Not everyone has a Ray Meyering in their life. And for this, I want to commend Mr. Warner for his leadership and passion on this bill, because this is the type of courage and the type of local government leadership that we need more of in New York. A previous speaker noted legislation that's pending in Albany. I'm hopeful that there will be movement on that legislation this session. But we cannot wait, because one life saved is enough. And if we can show leadership at the local level, here in the town of Brighton, in the city of Rochester, we have done our parents and our families a good service. When I was walking door to door last year, a common theme I heard, and I'm sure each of you have heard this before, is a fear of being out of control when it came to the safety of their children, when they put the safety of their children at risk by putting them on the bus in the morning and not knowing if they're going to come back home. That's a very real moment and experience for a lot of Brighton parents. And this is one of the many common sense gun safety pieces of legislation and tools that we can provide peace of mind to those parents to know that their child is not guaranteed to be safe, but is more likely than not. And so I think, and I thank the supervisor and Chief Henderson for their leadership in public safety, and I thank this board for their courage tonight to pass this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board during this public hearing?
Supervisor, I have just a few comments I'd like to make, if
Please.
that's appropriate. I did want to address one particular comment raised by Mr. Weller that I think is important to correct for the record. This proposed local law does not seek to render useless the possession of firearms in the home as a defensive mechanism.
Made a note of that same point. I'm glad you're...
In fact, this very issue was discussed relative to the New York City ordinance that Councilmember Werner made reference to. As Councilmember Werner indicated, a very similar law is in effect in New York City. And going back as far back, if I can get back in my computer here, to a court case out of the Supreme Court of the County of New York from 2012, so approximately 6.5 years ago, the court took up that very issue and pointed out that the reason why the city of New York enacted this local law with the specific language immediate out of someone's immediate possession or control is because a local law that would require a gun to be essentially disabled while in someone's possession and control would run potentially afoul of the Second Amendment. However, and the Supreme Court has ruled similarly in a couple different cases involving local laws across the country. However, in this particular local law as proposed, as in the New York City local law, the idea of having that gun readily available for defense is that it would be in somebody's immediate possession or control and would not need to be locked up at that point in time, so they could use it for their defense or defense of their home or family. And I wanted to point that out to make sure that the record was clear that there is no constitutional infirmity with respect to the proposed local law here, and also to further explain why that language of immediate possession and control is very important in the local law as proposed.
Jim, before you respond, I would want to see always, is there anyone that has not yet spoken that would like to address this local law in this public hearing? Go ahead, Jim.
I have some difficulty with some of the stretched interpretations that Mr. Gordon has made of that decision, particularly in this local law where we talk about immediate possession or control, which was specifically what I addressed in my opening remarks. And I defy you to define for me where in this local law or in any law immediate possession or control is clearly established so that I, as a plain, ordinary, non-legal, not law-educated citizen, knows what that means. Does it mean it's in my pocket? Does it mean it's under my pillow? Does it mean it's on my nightstand? Or does it mean when I walk into my house and lock my front door that I have immediate control and possession of everything in my home, which I can get to in 60 seconds or less? Is that immediate enough? I don't know.
Jim, I'll answer that question for you. The answer is no. That is not immediate enough. And I want to make clear that there is a legislative history on this. Obviously, the scenario, and I've heard Councilmember Werner describe this, he has a wood shop down in his basement. If a child, if perhaps a grandchild, now I don't believe Councilman Werner has a gun in his house.
I do not.
But if that child was upstairs and found that gun, 60 seconds would not be in their immediate possession and control. So I think we can very clearly state that no, that would not be within your immediate possession and control.
And that's a fine concept, and I can't quarrel too much with that. But I can say that my wife and I are alone in our house with our grandchildren who live thousands of miles away. And when I lock my front door, I have immediate control and possession of everything in that house, whether it's 6 seconds or 60 seconds away. And whether you disagree with me or not, as I define the law, immediate possession or control certainly will withstand that test. Because if someone walks through my front door, through that locked door, that is where immediate possession and control has been violated.
Ken, can you address, or even the chief, but can you address the genesis of that terminology?
I thought I tried to, but I'll try again, maybe perhaps to try to do a slightly better job. I think the best way to understand it is this. The idea is that we want to allow somebody to have a gun in their immediate possession and control and ready to use it. That is what the Second Amendment allows. And when it's not in their immediate possession and control, it needs to be locked up. And it's that simple. And if you don't understand what it means to have that gun in your immediate possession and control, then perhaps you should not own a gun in the first place, because you don't understand what it means to control a weapon which is used for self-defense, or at least in this particular instance, what we're talking about is self-defense. The courts have talked about immediate possession and control as being readily accessible in an emergency. So is it readily accessible in an emergency if it's not within reach of you? I would say no. Is there a statutory definition of that? No. Is there case law that interprets it? No. But we do have this case out of the Supreme Court of the County of New York, which took up that issue and pointed out the difference between a local law which would not withstand constitutional challenge, which would prohibit the possession, immediate possession or control of a firearm in all instances to be an operable condition, and contrasted that with what our local law here proposed, identical to that of the City of New York's adopted local law, which has been on the book and being enforced in practice in New York City.
Using that language.
Using that exact same
And I
language.
think, and that's the point that I think is important, Jim. We did not make this language up out of whole cloth. This is language that is in use in one of the leading similar laws. It's obviously not unusual that every word in a law doesn't have a definition. But we took that language, and let me make it very clear again so that the record is absolutely clear. Your entire house, whether your front door is locked or not, it does not meet the definition for the purposes of this law of being within your immediate control.
And
That is the legislative intent of this body, and I think it's also important to note that this law was drafted in direct consultation with the
I'll weigh
chief
in
of
in a
police.
moment. Jim was in the middle of finishing something, and then I'll
Yep.
address.
Oh, Chief, go right ahead.
We're hearing the lawyers discuss what immediate control is.
Right.
And I believe it's going to be a police officer that's going to have to make that decision.
Correct.
Okay. There's no doubt in my mind that you are a responsible gun owner.
I sure hope so.
In my 33 years of law enforcement, I can share examples where I've dealt with individuals who are not responsible gun owners.
And I have too.
Okay. And we currently have no legislation that controls that. We had an individual, you even know who issued your pistol permit. We had an individual that left a firearm unattended. It was stolen because of the way and manner in which it was kept, stored. I had nothing I could arrest that individual for. In my mind, it was irresponsible gun ownership. In my mind, it was an impact of public safety. What I did do was contact the issuing judge and had him review the circumstances around this. Initially, Councilman Warner and I were having a discussion as to whether we needed this law in Brighton, and wasn't so sure that we did. I'm a firm believer now that this law puts an onus on a gun owner. I have gun locks. I will give out gun locks to whoever wants one, free of charge. You buy a handgun now, what comes with the handgun is a gun lock. And you know, we're talking about immediacy of control, we're talking about the right to protect ourselves, the use of deadly physical force, right? I understand that. Situations that we respond to oftentimes deal with firearms that are just left in the home, unattended. You talked about the storage that you currently utilize. Not every homeowner does that. And you talked about statistics, and we want to make sure, and I think this law goes a long way to make sure that there is not an unintended tragedy by not having a gun properly stored.
I concur with that we don't want anything bad to happen as a result of an unattended firearm. But I go back to the legislation about the immediate possession or control, as being murky, unsatisfactory, unclear. And Mr. Gordon, when I made my remarks, I said I really didn't want to get into a Second Amendment discussion about what the right to bear arms means, and hopefully no one else would, but it seemed like you wanted to go down that path. I really still don't want to go down that path, but clearly we have a difference of perspective as to what the right to bear arms means. It doesn't mean it's got to be in your pocket. It can be on the mantle over your fireplace, for that matter. But if it's in my locked house, I assure you, Mr. Gordon, and anyone else who's interested, it's in my control and possession, despite what this town board might think.
Thank you, Mr. Weller. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? I do want to, again, for the record, we did have a record from the last public hearing, and all of that commentary will again be incorporated in the record of this public hearing. Is there anyone else that would like to address the town board in this matter? Then I declare this public hearing to be closed. And Chris, I'm going to ask you to make the motion.
Bill, on the matter regarding firearm storage and safety local law, resolution number 1, I move that we adopt the resolution before us to enact this.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Just a quick question for the chief regarding the gun locks that you referred to earlier. Now, for a gun owner, how long would it take them to disengage that gun lock in order to render their... I'm not a gun owner, so I don't really know.
So
but
I have one gun that I own that's outside of my duty weapon. I currently have a trigger lock. And the time it takes me to unlock that weapon, I take a key, less than 30 seconds.
Okay.
It's not, and there's other storage containers that are finger activated as far as entering in a code into a lock, but the very basic gun lock that I'm aware of that a lot of gun owners use are trigger locks, and it's finding your key, right, Jim? Finding the key, and inserting it and turning it, and then the gun is ready.
Okay.
Jason, may I?
The public hearing's been closed, Jim. We can,
The question was posed to the chief. I'd like to concur with the chief.
I'm sure I'd be okay with that.
I mean, all I'm saying is you're welcome, but it will not be part of the record of the
That's
public
fine.
hearing. Okay.
The chief's description of unlocking a handgun is something that I'm quite familiar with. I have a few handguns. Mine are not trigger lock guns, but they're the type with cable through the barrel.
That's the one I showed you last week. The last time.
With a key lock on it. Now, it's great to have that, and it does exactly the purpose of preventing a child from, or someone else that doesn't belong in the possession of that gun, from hurting themselves or somebody else. But the sequence is as follows. In order to make that thing work properly, you have to hide the key. So the first thing is you got to find the key. Then you have to go to the weapon. Then you have to unlock it. Then you have to take it out of the barrel. Then you have to load the magazine. Then you have to chamber around. Now, despite the wisdom of the town board and the thickness of the town code, that would make a better weapon at that time than unlocking that gun. I'd rather throw the town code at him, which is about this thick, than fool around trying to find all of the requirements to work with that gun. So yes, it is an efficient, but it is not a ready access to a firearm. It's going to take you a minute or so to get that thing open. It just does.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFonzio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Chris, I want to thank you for taking the lead on this issue. I want to express my appreciation to the chief for the time you took in working with Chris, the research you did, the discussions you had, the attorney to the town, all engaged in putting together a law that I believe this board anticipates will properly balance the interests that are at play here. It will not restrict ownership. It will not make firearms unusable in Brighton. It is clear and it does not violate the Second Amendment. I do not own guns, but I have shot them, actually, very similar to Jeremy Cooney's experience. My first time was in Boy Scout camp. And there is, as you said, a lot of people don't learn the right way, the safe way to operate a firearm. So again, thank you everybody, Jim and everybody else that has addressed this issue. I do particularly want to call out Moms Demand Action and Sharon, who could not be here tonight, but for her a very cogent testimony at the first public hearing, and I'm pleased to make this vote unanimous. I vote aye. Next, we have a public hearing. Thank you, Jim. We have a public hearing on proposed parking restrictions for parking on Edgewood Avenue at Wintergreen Way. Dan, has the necessary legal notice been?
Yes, yes, Supervisor. This notice was also in the February 21st edition of the Post.
Great. Notice having been given, I declare this public hearing to be open. I'm trying to think if this originated with you, Mike, or with Chief Henderson.
No, I think this originated with me.
Okay.
Mike's,
Yeah, so we had a report that folks were parking along Edgewood Avenue, blocking the sight distance from people leaving Wintergreen Way. Took a look at it, made sense to enact a no parking from here to corner, which would prevent parking from 200 feet on either side of that roadway. We talked to Monroe County Department of Transportation. They had no objection to it other than we take a permit. So that's what led to this public hearing.
Thank you. The public hearing is now open. Would anybody like to address the board on this matter? Hearing none, any discussion from members of the board? Hearing none, then I declare this public hearing to be closed. Can I have a motion, Christine?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFoncio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. And thank you again for coming out in the weather. We appreciate it. We did get a question. I want to circle back because as we mentioned, we do during the open forum offer the opportunity for people to call in with questions or comments, and a question was posed whether a legal document has been executed between the town and Whole Foods Plaza regarding road access to Clover and Allen's Creek. And the answer is the town, the developer, and members of the Allen's Creek neighborhood have all signed a restrictive covenant that will prohibit traffic from entering or leaving. There won't be any driveway, there won't be any access point to or from the Whole Foods Plaza to either Allen's Creek Road or Clover Street. That was specifically required as part of this town board's approval. And we believe it is one of the reasons that the very significant amenities of the Whole Foods project, including the acquisition of right-of-way, which currently primarily belongs to RG&E, and construction of the Auburn Trail, which will run nearly 2 miles from the Pittsford Town Line to Highland Avenue, a tremendous community amenity, as well as traffic safety improvements, including left turn arrows and a service road behind the properties across Monroe Avenue from the proposed Whole Foods Plaza. All of those amenities that will mitigate any impacts of the project, but they are enhanced by the fact that the town, the developer, and the neighborhood, several members of the neighborhood association, acting on behalf of the neighborhood association, signed a document that was approved by council, not only for the town and the developer, but also for the neighborhood association. So we are there. We are making sure that with that restrictive covenant, there will not be access to or from Allens Creek Road or Clover Street, so that the neighbors won't be seeing traffic coming directly out from the plaza. I hope that answers the question of the gentleman, and we'll move on. Communications. Can I have a motion to receive and file the communications this evening?
So moved.
Second.
We have one item, but it is the 2018 annual report from the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor. A lot of information in it, a lot of pictures in it. In fact, so many pictures that when you tried to load it this afternoon, you may have had trouble. I did, so we resent it without all those nice pictures. But again, I think it's important, since we're talking about the Erie Canal, I just want to talk briefly again about the work that the town of Brighton has done in collaboration, in partnership with the towns of Pittsford and Perrington, responding to concerns raised by residents of all three of our towns to make sure that the Canal Corporation, different group from this one, this is the Canalway National Heritage group, but as you remember, the Canal Corporation proposed clear cutting trees up and down the canal, not only in our three towns, but in Monroe County, Orleans County, and in fact, they did so in parts of Orleans and Monroe County. You may have seen some coverage last night. It's ironic, actually, that they were talking about cutting these trees down, and they went ahead and did it. They didn't conduct any environmental review, and now they have to go back and fix their work because they didn't do it right. That canal has been there for pushing 200 years. It is not a dam, contrary to what the Canal Corporation sometimes tries to suggest. And it, in fact, would be a project that would extend all the way from Erie County, the Buffalo area, all the way across to Albany County, the Albany area. And for the Canal Corporation to have even conceived that a project like that would not be subject to environmental review and was clearly segmented in any effort to present it to the community, another no-no under SEQR, the State Environmental Quality Review Act. So I'm pleased to see this. I'm pleased to see these pictures, and I'm certainly hopeful that the canal for many, many years to come will continue to be safe, but will also be a place of nature where trees can grow in a safe way. There certainly may be situations where it's important. It's always important to be able to inspect the canal. They have done that. In fact, the only breaches of the canal in the last 50 years have been caused by man-made activity, most notably the incident out in towards the Bushnells Basin area, where an attempt was being made to drill under the canal. And that drilling activity, not trees, is what caused damage to the canal. So I just want to, give that update to the community. We did have a meeting. Folks from the community group that has been monitoring the canal and advocating to continue the canal in its present state, and we got an update from the Canal Corporation. It wasn't entirely satisfactory, but they did describe, this work that they were going to do to put at least some trees back in, although I understand that instead of really doing a holistic look to see where they ought to go, they responded, and it's good to respond to individual concerns, but it's less than it would be if they had taken that whole look. But the one thing they've made very clear, and we're going to hold them to, is that there will be a full environmental review of any project, and that's going to take certainly some time and a lot of public input, because it is a big project. It would have big impacts. So we're going to stay on it. We're going to continue to monitor that. And citizen activists, I appreciate the work that that group has done, Elizabeth Agtee and others. Thank you. So we have a motion to receive and file that correspondence. If there's no further commentary, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Committee reports, community services. Robin?
Thanks, Bill. The Community Services Committee has not convened in the intervening time period since the last town board meeting. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, March 20th at 9:30 a.m. at the Brookside School, 220 Idlewood Road. As always, members of the public are invited to attend.
Thanks very much. And I know the Parks and Rec Advisory Board also had to cancel their meeting in the aftermath of the windstorm because the Brighton Rec activities had closed down. So we don't have anything to report on them even. So thank you. Jason, Finance.
Yes, the Finance and Administrative Services Committee met last Thursday, February 21st. Each of the items that were reviewed in committee appear on tonight's agenda and will be reviewed in further detail. Our next committee meeting will be on Tuesday, March 5th. We meet at 3:30 in the afternoon. This time we'll be meeting in the downstairs meeting room because of our audit. Normally we're in the stage conference room, but next meeting will be downstairs. The public is invited to attend.
Thanks very much, Jason. Public Safety?
Public Safety has not met since the last town board meeting. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, March 12th at 8 a.m. in the lower meeting room here in Town Hall. Although we haven't met, I do want to share a couple activities of note with our public safety organizations. On March 12th, also in the afternoon, the Brighton Fire Department Citizens Committee, which is charged with reviewing the analysis of the firefighter safety, staffing, and resource allocation report provided to the fire district last year to guide the district in exactly that. That will be reconvening on March 12th and continuing work on the review. Also, the Brighton Fire Department is holding a volunteer information session at station number 2 on East Avenue on Monday, March 18th, 7 to 9 p.m. So if you are interested in learning more about how to serve the community in that way, attend that. There's also a terrific program through the Brighton Fire Department. It's the Bunker College program. There's an info session on that on Friday, March 22nd at 11 a.m. at station number 2. This is a win-win sort of program. The Brighton Fire Department gains qualified firefighters, college students save money and earn college credit while building career skills with the fire department, and the community at large is protected. So more details on both of those sessions can be found at brightonfd.org online. And also the Brighton Volunteer Ambulance is holding 2 CPR AED classes next week. One on Monday, March 4th, 6:30 to 10 for healthcare providers, and another on Tuesday, March 5th, 6:30 to 10 for the general public. And information on registration can be found at brightonambulance.org. And that is all.
Thanks very much.
Hey, Christine, I did just want to clarify, is that Firehouse number 1 on East Avenue? Firehouse number 1?
Yes, thank you. My mistake. The East Avenue Firehouse.
Both of those meetings are at Station 1, are they not?
Station 1, okay. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Chris, Public Works.
Our February meeting was reported on at our last town board meeting, and our next meeting will be held on March the 5th at 9 o'clock, and the public is encouraged to attend.
Thanks, Chris. We don't maybe say it often enough. The Finance and Administrative Services Committee meets before every meeting, a week before or thereabouts.
1 week and 1 day before our town board meeting, yes.
Right? Before every meeting. The other three, Community Services, Public Safety, and Public Works committees each meet once a month. So, but thank you for reporting on them when we do have material to report. We'll go on then to new business. Jason, reading and approval of claims.
Yes, Bill, earlier today I reviewed claims totaling $1,292,352.28. Notable claims include the Brighton Volunteer Ambulance in the amount of $285,000, representing the 2019 contract payment, less retainage for fuel. Also to the Depository Trust Company in the amount of $348,850, which was a debt service payment for the Parkland refunding, which was principal of $325,000 and interest of $23,850, related to the refunding of our 2007 Parks serial bonds. And refunding in public finance is the equivalent of refinancing in the private world,
Right.
Getting a better rate. Also to Northeastern Rescue Vehicles Incorporated in the amount of $97,900 for purchase delivery of our 2018 Demers Type 2 ambulance as per the bid award for Brighton Volunteer Ambulance. And finally, to Terry Tree Service in the amount of $8,669.35 for planned tree removals. The claims all appear to be in order, and I move that they be approved.
Second.
Jason, thank you. Chris, discussion on any of those? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Robin.
The next matter seeks to authorize the supervisor to execute a contract with Young Explosives Corporation for the provision of a fireworks display on July 4th, 2019, in an amount not to exceed $11,400. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
You don't have to go all the way down to Washington for fireworks. It's a revelation that they're going to have fireworks in Washington this year, but we're going to have fireworks in Brighton. Stay home, roll out your blanket, enjoy our 4th of July festivities, and the fireworks. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye, and if fireworks weren't enough, there's great music. Robin, why don't you take care of the Sky Coasters resolution 2?
Sure, Bill. The next matter seeks to authorize the supervisor to execute a contract with the Sky Coasters for a performance at the July 4th, 2019 celebration in an amount not to exceed $3,800. I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
You definitely won't get to hear the Sky Coasters if you go down to Washington. You'll hear them here in Brighton. Any further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Jason.
Yes, the next matter seeks to authorize a budget transfer in the amount of $700 from the Parks Department Buckland Park Maintenance Supplies account to the Buckland Park Facility Improvements account for needed equipment. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
I don't know, Paula, if there's anything you want to
Sure.
say about this?
The refrigerator at the lodge at the Buckland Park did a naughty, it broke down. This was an unplanned purchase, so there wasn't anything in the budget for this purchase, but there were some available funds in a different part of that budget, so we're going to slip those up to the 200 section and purchase a new refrigerator.
Perfect. Thank you. Motion and a second. Further discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio.
Aye.
Councilmember Werner.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt.
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado.
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy.
Aye. Jason, why don't you do the next one?
Yes,
too?
the next matter seeks to approve declaration of certain highway and sewer equipment as surplus to be disposed of through auction by Roy Teetsworth, Inc., or as junk. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
Two of these items, the dump body and the cement mixer, will be sold by Teetsworth Auction, and the other two, the lift gates, have no remaining value and will be disposed of as junk. Dan, please call unless there's any further discussion, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Christine?
The next matter, move that we adopt, that we authorize the supervisor to renew agreement with U of R Medicine EAP for the provision of employee assistant program services at a fixed rate of $22.44 per employee.
Can I have a second?
Second.
We've been working with the U of R's EAP for a number of years. This will be a 2% increase over their rate for 2018. We have that motion from Councilmember Corrado, seconded by Councilmember Werner. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Jason?
Yes, the next matter seeks to approve 2018 budget transfers and appropriations to reflect actual activity relative to the 2018 amended budget. I move we adopt the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
And again, I'm going to look to our Director of Finance, Paula Parker, to discuss this. This is our
This is our.
This is it. This is our end of the year, end of 2018 final financial.
After consulting with our highway superintendent commissioner, the GIGP, Monroe Avenue Streetscape Program, fondly known as, is officially complete. So we are going to do some transfers in 2018. We're going to finalize giving the highway fund some inter-fund department charges back for labor services that the highway department did provide for this project. We've claimed and received all of the grant funds for this project. So these transfers and appropriations will allow us to wrap that project up, and we will not be rolling that project into 2019.
Yay.
And that will wind up with that money going to the highway department accounts reflecting the
Yes,
services provided by your terrific highway department staff. Pete Springer did yeoman's duty. Since I'm talking about Pete, Pete also did yeoman's duty here in the windstorm. We're lucky to have people like Pete Springer in our
And I just ran into him in the parking lot as he was plowing tonight.
Doesn't sleep.
He's everywhere.
Thanks. We have a motion and a second on that. Any further discussion or questions? Dan, please call the roll.
Sorry, a lot of weather. Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. The next matter relates to the development and authorization of a request for proposals for the administrator of the Community Choice Aggregation Program. I'm going to recuse myself from this matter. I do not have a conflict of interest, but my service on the a nonprofit association of towns board, it is not a conflict under New York State General Municipal Law, but so that there is no question, as any member should do anytime there's an appearance potentially of a conflict, I will recuse myself. I'm going to ask Jason, as Finance Committee Chair, to conduct this next item, and I'll ask Ken or somebody to come and get me in the office when you're finished.
Okay, So with respect to the next item for the CCA, can I have a motion? Chris?
The next item is to approve the request for proposals, or RFQ, from the towns of Brighton, Arundecoit, Pittsford, and the Village of Pittsford for the Community Choice Aggregation, or CCA, administrator, and to authorize the solicitation of applications for CCA administration. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
And Ken, can you maybe, I know you have a memo leading us in, can you give us some background as to how this document came into being?
Yes, as the board knows, the town adopted a local law to open up the process of having town residents come together and purchase electricity as a group, as an entire town group. This is what is called the Community Choice Aggregation local law. That law was adopted by this board last year. And the program is designed to not only, what is obvious, perhaps save money by having group buying power, but also, and perhaps most importantly, allow the town to focus on its desire to have renewable energy as the primary and perhaps sole source of energy for town residents to be able to purchase. This program has been adopted and needs someone to run it. And that's what we're doing now, is we're looking for an administrator for that program. It's going to be a job that entails explaining what this program is to the community, and then engaging in the process of seeking out energy providers who can meet the goals of the town. Now, as we went through our process, the towns of Pittsford and Arundecoit and the Village of Pittsford were going through similar processes in passing their own local laws for community choice aggregation. And the discussion between the towns has emerged to allow us to work in coordination, I'll say, with the other towns who share the goals that the town of Brighton have in both the group buying and the selection of a source of renewable energy, a renewable energy provider, and to find an administrator who can lead each of the towns through that process. While we discussed that group effort as the towns coming together to look for that administrator, we also recognize the importance of preserving each town's independence in its own decision-making and procurement of that administrator. And so what you have before you is a request for proposals to go out to companies that might have the experience and requisite skill to act as an administrator for the town, and can put forth proposals to the towns of Pittsford, Brighton, Arundecoit, and the Village of Pittsford to act as administrator. It is our hope that by working in combination with the other towns, we will attract high quality and interested companies to come in and act in that capacity. But the RFQ you have before you does preserve your independent right as the town board of the town of Brighton to select a administrator for Brighton's CCA program without having to worry what the decisions might be of the towns of Pittsford or Arundecoit or the Village of Pittsford. You're not bound to make the same decisions that they are. So the effort is combined, but the decision is going to be individual.
Thanks.
I know we discussed this at FASC, and we had reviewed certain revisions just to try and button up and clarify some language. For example, I know that the initial draft had indicated that the proposals would be going into Arundequoit, but then language was added so that they'd be within 1 business day shared with all of the participating municipalities. And it looks like we've got some dates in here that the deadlines for submissions will be April 1st. So give the responding parties about a month to respond, to deliver their proposals for review.
It's anticipated that the other towns will approve this same draft, and we will be able to send it out by March 1st, so by this Friday, so is the hope.
And this was based on, this particular RFP/RFQ was based upon one that was used in the city of Poughkeepsie. Is that a fair understanding?
I think the original draft was, but it's been revised, I think, and tailored to our local needs and specifications. I know that I've been working with the attorneys for the towns of Arundequoit and the town of Pittsford in coming up with what you see before you now. I've had my hand in it, they've had their hands in it, and I know that FASC, had probably made the last revisions to it just earlier this week. So,
Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify some things that we did mention in FASC, and I wanted to make sure that I'm understanding that they are reflected in this particular draft. And that is in Section 2, Paragraph 4, that the intent to have the respondents disclose any and all remunerative or fee-sharing agreements with third parties, regardless of whether there is a provision of service or product. That language does reflect that intent now. I just want to clarify.
I'm just reviewing it.
Oh, I understand. I understand. I see you reading over there.
While Ken's doing that, I shared a comment that Robin had made at FASC that we didn't want to get tied up as we engage with our other communities here and stumble all over ourselves or each other in trying to get this enacted, because we all feel that the CCA is an important first step, or important step among many steps we can take in addressing global warming and getting renewable energy as our primary source of energy here in town. At the same time, I think it's important by our joining that we create a critical mass of households and such that will allow us to implement this sort of program that much faster, and as importantly, an inertia that might encourage other communities to join with us as well.
Exactly.
So I don't think we're going to get tied up. We're the only town board, I understand, that actually is going to act on adopting this RFQ or RFP. But the other towns will do it internally as part of their standard administrative process. But, we wanted the community to have full opportunity to take a look at this.
So, yes, in fact, I think the language is even broader than you would suggest. What the language requires is that whoever puts in a proposal, we call them under this RFP a respondent. Any respondent that has any third-party contract, any contract with someone else, whether it's as a subcontractor or as a consultant, will be required to not only disclose what that relationship is, but also to actually provide a copy of that contract as well. So it's very broad language to make sure that we know not just the individual company that puts in the proposal, but anyone else that is part of or acting in a supporting role or a consulting role to that respondent.
Thank you, Ken, and I think that's important just for sunlight purposes. And then the last point of clarification I have is just in those that review the document. We've used that term staff, and I just want to make sure that we're very clear in defining who is reviewing the proposals, and does staff include members of town board? Because it seems like we put something in there to say, we can look up the specific language.
Is that the evaluation section?
Section
I'm sorry,
7,
Section
paragraph
7.
8, perhaps?
First paragraph of Section 7, it says, "All proposals that are deemed responsive as described above will be reviewed by staff as determined by each municipality in their sole judgment." So we have not defined staff deliberately, and staff can include town board, but does not expressly include town board.
Yes and no.
Okay.
As you know, our procurement policy here in the town of Brighton, which we are not deviating from, would require that any ultimate decision on who gets appointed as administrator will be voted on by the town board. Prior to a vote, you're given information, you're able to ask questions, you are the ultimate decision makers. My suspicion is that staff here, for our purposes, refers to me, members of the Department of Public Works, including Mike, and Paula in the Finance Department, and whoever else she might have. The chief is saying probably not him.
Sure.
But if there's a background check needed, we might need to call on the chief and his department as well. So I think we can decide, and I think that flexibility is important to assure that each town has their own independent ability to evaluate, right? So if we said it shall be reviewed by the Commissioner of Public Works, says, then that defines the staff. We might want to have a broader selection of staff look at this. A different town might have a narrower or different people. Right. And sometimes we have different positions and different names for those positions as well. Ultimately, though, there's no doubt that the town board members, all four of you, because we're missing one, all four of you will be in the process of evaluating, seeing what those proposals are, and making the decision.
And I did notice that there's language included that those who review the proposals will sign non-disclosure agreements so that proprietary information of these administrators will be protected.
Of course.
All right. Hey, those were all my questions, and I think that the RFP, as it reads now, strikes that balance. Brighton's kind of been the tip of the spear, and it's been nice to lead in this area, and it preserves our autonomy as a town and to conduct business the way that we do, and at the same time it gives us that force multiplier that we need to strike the best value for our residents.
So the additional comment that I had raised at FASC as well has been incorporated into the very first section regarding our right to act independently.
Yes.
And that be disclosed to any of the people, any of the organizations that are responding to the RFQ, that they understand that we still, despite the fact that we're acting jointly, are looking to be cooperative, that at the same time we can act independently.
Right.
Which is important.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Read the supervisor. And nice work on that, Ken, and I know, Robin, you worked very hard on that as well.
Mostly can.
That's what we have the lawyers for, eh?
It'll be looks
Every
like
now and then, we serve a useful purpose.
looks like a springtime project coming up. Good night,
Thank
Sue.
you.
Thank
Good night, Sue.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, we will continue. Chris?
Next item is to authorize the supervisor to execute a stormwater maintenance easement agreement with Mama Sans Monroe LLC for the property at 2735 Monroe Avenue. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
Mike, do you want to just briefly?
Yeah, there's two of these stormwater maintenance agreements on the agenda. Basically, what they give the town the ability to do is go in and enforce the maintenance and operation of a stormwater management facility that was built as part of a project. So this gives us the ability to go in and have the owner maintain it if we find something wrong with it.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Christine?
On the matter of appointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals, I move that we adopt the resolution as prepared. I adopt that let's try this again.
It's snowing.
Chris coaching me again. Ken coaching me. And I was even prepared for this. But on the matter of appointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals, I move that we adopt the resolution before us, which is specifically that we appoint Kathleen Dunvan Schmidt to fill out the remainder of the term that I vacated on appointment to the town board.
And that's a term that will run through December 31st, 2024.
So she takes on a big commitment.
Yes, she does, but
Second.
and follows some pretty big shoes.
Size 5.5.
Right, as Ed Sullivan used to say, pretty big shoes.
I second that motion.
We have Christine and Chris on that motion. Discussion?
I would like to just say that I have had the pleasure of working with Ms. Schmidt for many, many years in a different capacity. Ms. Schmidt, as well as being a longtime Brighton resident with children going through the Brighton school system, is also the Assistant United States Trustee for the Western District of New York. As some of you may know, I am a Chapter 7 panel trustee, and in the realm of financial and bankruptcy matters, have had the pleasure of working with her for as long as she has been here in town, which I believe has been somewhere along the lines of 15 to 18 years as my memory serves. And thank you, Kathy, for coming forward and taking on this important responsibility.
Always appreciate it when people are willing to step up to the plate, and I know you've worked with her as well, Chris, and also in the bankruptcy world.
What was two impressive things. One, she suggested she would bring kindness along with
Yes,
it.
she
Not
did.
that we're not kind already in that committee, but that's an important aspect of approaching our citizens' applications. But what really impressed me was that no sooner did both her boys get through the Brighton schools, just this past year, her second son's graduated now, that she stepped right up to fill that void with community service. I thought that was very impressive.
Indeed. Well, we have a motion and a second. Let's make it official. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. We'll go back to you, Chris, for that second stormwater maintenance agreement.
The next item, to authorize the supervisor to execute a stormwater maintenance easement agreement with 157 Sawgrass Drive LLC for the property at 157 Sawgrass Drive. I move that we adopt the resolution before us.
Second.
And Mike again?
Similar to the last stormwater management agreement, it allows us to get in and maintain the stormwater improvements associated with the project.
This is a new office.
Over off of Sawgrass Drive. It's quite large, it's 85,000 square feet, and three-story building for pediatric, was pediatric?
85,000 square feet.
Total, yeah. 37,000 of it will be pediatric skilled nursing, and the rest will be medical office.
Okay.
So it's quite a large building.
Good. Motion and a second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Matters of the supervisor, can I have a motion to receive and file the January 2019 expense and revenue report?
So moved.
Second.
And as always, we'll have a more detailed report at the end of the first quarter.
Yes, we will, and this is also posted on our website.
Great. Discussion? For those of you that have already gone to the website to read it, no, probably not. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Just a couple of other things. First, I did mention earlier, we were talking about the great work that Pete Springer did during the GIGP project, but also leading our highway crews. They got some trees out of the road earlier this week, and they did it fast, and they did it at seemingly all hours of the day. They worked hard, as they always do. I appreciate, please share all of our appreciation to Pete, but everybody that put in extra time that day hopefully, we thought we were winding down that time of year when we're putting in all the extra time, but of course they're out tonight with this snow, and this was a tough snow. It came down at rush hour, but I know they've been working hard. But also I want to express my appreciation to not only our highway department, but also to our emergency service providers, the Brighton Police Department, the Brighton Fire Department, and over in West Brighton, of course, the Rochester Fire Department, and Brighton Volunteer Ambulance. I really appreciate the work that all of them did or were at least prepared to do. We were prepared for a storm that could have been worse. This was a pretty serious storm. We did have wind gusts in the Rochester area, well over 60 miles an hour, and we took down a lot of trees. I think this time, at least in Brighton, we were pretty lucky, though most of those trees did not fall on wires. But we still had a lot of work to do. The police and fire were ready. The BVA, the concern particularly always is if people with medical devices lose power, BVA can often come in and give them some backup while the power is being fixed. But I also do want to, we sometimes go after RG&E. They don't always perform. They didn't perform well after the last windstorm back in March of 17, and I really do think they did some self-evaluation. And although this storm wasn't as bad, they clearly were preparing for it well in advance. And we're out as outages did occur, they went out. And as always, because one person, really two people, performed well in 2017 and performed well again this time. Our government contact person, Veronica Dasher, is phenomenally responsive, and in particular with one of those outages, she really kept tabs on the work crew that was going over to some trees had fallen on wires behind Village Lane, knocked out a number of houses on Village Lane, and she saw to it that tracked the presence of the crew, got them there in a hurry, and that particular street was fixed before RG&E they expected a big job and they got it fixed sooner. So Veronica does a great job. Yvette Torres, who, the two of them, between them, divvy up the county and sometimes have each other's back depending on availability. Both are terrific, and I appreciate what they do in communicating with us. So I think all around we can feel good. I know it's, even if you're out for 6-8 hours, it is scary when the power goes down. You don't know when it's going to come back on. It's a wonderful feeling when you see those bucket trucks come down the street. And one of the interesting things, by the way, in a windstorm, of course, you can't put safely crews up in those bucket trucks when there are 60-mile-an-hour or more gusts. And people were pretty understanding. But I think that's something to remember, that you can't always fix them as quick. RG&E can't get out there and do the work as quickly as they'd like because it just isn't safe. And they won't put their crews in danger, and I understand that. Just one other thing I want to note, at our next town board meeting on March 13th, I will be giving the annual State of the Town address. For those of you that have heard me give the State of the Town address before, I can assure you that the state of the town is very good. And of course, late last year, we got the great news that Brighton is the best place to live in the entire state of New York. This week, the organization that rated Brighton the best place to live voted the Brighton Central School District the best school district in upstate New York. And that's a daily double that we can always be proud of. So we'll talk about those things and much more 2 weeks from tonight at the State of the Town message. And as always, I welcome the community to come out and listen to that, whether you do so here in the room or at home. That's all I have. Matters of the attorney to the town. Ken?
Last Monday and Tuesday, I had the pleasure of attending the Association of Towns Conference in New York City. I want to thank the town board for allowing me to do that. I did attend several continuing legal education sessions and then sort of wandered about the conference, poking my head into different sessions that bore upon what we do here and what is important to us here in Brighton. I attended an excellent session with Robert Freeman, the executive director of the Committee on Open Government, who talked about FOIL and open meetings law. I'm happy to report, after sitting through that session, that we're doing a lot of things right. In fact, I would say just about everything right. And but the information is always good to get updated and sort of refreshed on. In fact, I shared a decision with the town clerk this evening for his reading enjoyment that I thought might bear upon some issues that he's been working with. I also attended a session on legal issues that were of concern to town board members across the state. And I have a number of matters that I'm going to be happy to review with you during a session that we can hold at your pleasure and at your convenience. Interesting, something I learned, those sessions that we hold where I'm providing my legal advice to the town board, do not have to fall within one of the executive session reasons. In fact, they are not in fact executive sessions, but rather simply the board consulting with legal counsel for legal advice. And I'm happy to provide an update to you on those issues that I think would bear going over with you on a number of different matters. I also attended a session on town clerk matters, legal issues that town clerks are facing, and town clerks were asking some questions, and I'll share that with you, Dan, when we have a chance to sit down as well. And then one of the other interesting sessions I attended was a seminar discussing the regulation and permitting of food trucks in municipalities. And I know we've seen over the last several years more and more food trucks in town, and there is a tension between the brick and mortar food establishments and the food trucks, and of course an interest of the town itself in making sure that we're providing safe places for our residents to visit and eat. And so there are some interesting ideas that I have out of that as well, if at some point in time we're interested in looking at that issue. Actually, the city of Rochester is got a good set of code provisions that are held up as an excellent example of food truck regulations, but town of Henrietta has some provisions, the town of Amherst out of Erie County has some good provisions, so something worth looking at, I think, down the road.
Thanks, Ken. You talk about that conference, and of course I was there as well, as was Christine and Robin. I've been involved with the association for a lot of years, and as you know, currently sit as a vice president of the organization. But the food truck is a great example because they do the great training at the annual meeting, but they also publish their Town Topics magazine each month. And if you haven't already, I encourage each of you to read the article about food trucks and their regulation. I thought it was one of the best, most thorough articles that I have read in that magazine, and it's something we have talked about, with Ramsey and Mike and I, and how we want to, and if we want to, proceed with any regulation. But that article is thorough. It was, I thought, even-handed. It's very easy to be partisan, I guess, in a small p sense, pro or con a given issue. This was written by really someone who I thought took a very balanced, thoughtful approach towards regulating or not regulating food trucks. So it just really, I thought, a great example of the good work, and the conference was a great example of the educational opportunities as well as the advocacy opportunities that come from the Association of Towns. So thanks for that report. Matters of the clerk, Dan?
Well, I don't know that my sinuses are going to allow me to discuss too much here, but I just wanted to point out that this Sunday at Brookside, I'm hosting some of the folks from Moms Demand Action that spoke for our hearings. As part of their Be Smart program. It's a program that National Moms Demand, along with Everytown, the group for gun safety that came out of Sandy Hook, are doing. So this Sunday during the market at 2 p.m. over at Brookside in the multipurpose room, we'll be doing that program will be presented, so it's open to the public, and I hope folks can come. BeSmartForKids.org is the website if you want to learn some more about that. But basically, it's a conversation about kids, guns, and safety. I think the action that the board took this evening goes a long way to that, and this dovetails nicely with that. And one of the things that it focuses on is helping parents have, frankly, an awkward conversation with the parents of their kids' friends. You talk about can my son bring over a peanut butter jelly sandwich to the play date? No, my son has peanut allergies, that would not be a great thing. Those conversations happen all the time. Is there a pool? Is there anything else that's going on we need to worry about? But asking, are there guns in the house? How are they stored? Again, you've taken action to help the how they're stored part, but it's an important thing that's out there, and it's to help give parents another tool. So I hope, we got a lot of room in that room, so I hope everybody can come and see, big turnout. We can always do it again.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for reaching out and for sponsoring that. Not technically within your purview, but I know a lot of people, are in and are talking down in your office. I think it's important to remind folks that the enhanced STAR applications, and specifically the income verification issues that have been getting some visibility, folks have only until the end of this week. Dan, do you want to?
Correct. Well, the one note I will from talking to Sue Wentworth, our assessor, earlier today, certainly if you're not sure, by all means, check in with them. As you can imagine, with any time there's a press on any particular issue, their volume of calls and visits has skyrocketed. They do have the phones going directly to voicemail right now, because it's hard to have a conversation with someone at the counter. A lot of times the folks are having conversations with, frankly, these are older residents. There may be, hearing issues, and a constantly ringing phone from all the people trying to get through does not help facilitate that conversation, needless to say. So it is going right to voicemail, but they're calling them back right away. So don't worry, you don't need to keep calling. If you've left a message, Sue and Renee will be calling you back, the second they are free. Before the end of the business day. But the one thing that she did mention is, certainly if you're not sure if you're signed up for the program, call them. If you're already part of that automatic verification in the past, you're still part of that automatic verification. But if, as with anything, if there's any doubt, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and ask.
There's also information on their webpage.
Loads of information on their
I thought
webpage.
very
Yes.
helpful
Yes.
information.
Dan, and looking at that, because my wife tore it out and put it right in front of me, but the income verification aspect is that to qualify for the enhanced STAR, I believe your household income has to be below 86,000.
Correct.
In some amount. So if your income is below that level, by all means, come by and make sure that you're, or call and find out and verify that you are properly registered.
And I would note that some of what is and some of what isn't considered income is not necessarily intuitive. Things like retirement accounts aren't always what you might think they would be. And those are the kind of situations in particular that a lot of people are calling about and people should call about.
Is it largely earned income then? Is it?
Well, no, it's not. Retirement accounts do come into play, but I don't want to, as I said, it is not. That's right.
Not a simple process.
No, absolutely not. It is complicated.
Yep. Yeah, this is exactly why when people come into my office asking about this, I'm like, we're very clear with some of the staff. We're like, we'd love to help you, but the assessor's office are the experts. We were talking about $1,700. It's an $800-900 difference between that and Basic Star. We certainly don't want to be responsible for having some slight error in what we say and having one of our seniors miss out on that kind of money, because that is a significant impact on the budget.
All right. Anything else?
I don't think I can get any more out. Here, so.
Matters of the town board.
I just wanted to mention that I did attend a Board of Education open forum, community forum last night, and it was both on the budget and then also on some diversity and equity initiatives that the school district will be implementing. And in novel fashion, the community forum portion was held in a peace circle format, and we had quite a few people there, and despite the attendance, the peace circle format worked very well. I feel that regardless whether you're timid about taking the microphone or very effusive. The format worked out very well, and so that's, just something I'm putting out there. No.
Now, their board meetings, their regular board meetings are televised. Was this
Yes.
session televised?
This session was not, because of the venue. It was held at Council Walk Primary School, which does not have the capacity to, did not have the capacity to film.
At least
And
not probably in there.
Yeah, because it was not in the auditorium.
Auditorium, which
It was,
does,
it was.
It's
yeah.
it's an interest, and I saw that they were doing that, and it is I like the idea. But it would be difficult from a
Right.
televising
Yeah,
perspective. But good for them for trying something different.
It was kind of in the cafeteria, and it worked. So, I did just want to make a couple of record announcements. I know that our recreation programs haven't been meeting, but we still do have some announcements. Our winter spring programming registration period is open currently, and we'd like to remind everyone that there's still plenty of spaces remaining in some of the newer programs. We revamped the registration booklet this year, and some of our new events still have spaces, so we invite all the community to experience what you may have been missing over at Brighton Rec. In addition to that, our after-school program is still accepting new participants, and so we do hope that you'll join us for this very flexible and affordable after-school program for children in 1st through 5th grades. And I just want to go down the calendar, some of our events. The Bunny Bash is coming up Friday, April 5th, 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the Brookside Recreation Center. Free admission, but registration is required. Details are still being finalized, but I do hear that there might be an appearance from the Spring Bunny. So, in addition to the egg hunt and all those fun activities,
I've
please
seen
do
that
check
bunny.
that out.
I've seen that bunny.
Yeah.
And,
So,
that's
again.
quite a hoppity figure.
There you go. And then our semi-annual DEA Pharmaceutical Take Back Day will be happening on Saturday, April 27th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. right here at the Public Safety Wing of Town Hall. And then Friday, May 3rd, we'll have Family Bingo at the Brookside Recreation Center from 6 to 7:15 p.m. That is $8 per person. And day after that, we have our Brighton Little League opening day for 2019. We'll start off right here at the Brighton Town Hall Complex. We do a mini parade. It's always a lot of fun, so do join us on Saturday, May 4th, 10 to 11:30 a.m. We also have our annual clean sweep coming up on Saturday, May 11th, and our semi-annual electronics recycling and document shredding event will be on Saturday, May 18th. So please do put those items in your calendar.
Spring
Yes,
calendar.
our spring events are cropping up, so don't miss them.
Thank you, Robin.
You're welcome.
Any other matters of the board?
Yes, I would just like to, first of all, thank the town for supporting my attendance at the Association of Towns as a newcomer to the board. It was such a welcome and informative experience. The fire hose of information was on full force, and I feel even better prepared to be doing good service for our community. One session of note that I attended was the highway safety for elected officials, which you might think is about being very careful when driving about town and wearing your bright yellow vest if you are out and about. But no, it was actually a truly informative presentation by Commissioner Guyon's counterpart from another part of the state, giving the broad overview on traffic calming, traffic safety, and what we can do in our communities to either change configuration or legislate addition of extra controls, or to influence our built environment in such a way that brings down the car first terrors that we experience in the environment as it's built now. Now, Brighton is not as bad as some communities, but we came away with some very good information there that I hope we'll be able to bring to life, bring to fruition in Brighton soon. Related to transportation is mobility, and I just wanted to encourage community members to explore the RTS, Reimagine RTS plans with the community mobility zones. I know many Brighton residents attended the recent info session in Pittsford 2 weeks ago. The next possible session is Monday, March 4th, in Henrietta, at the Henrietta Town Hall from 6 to 7:30 p.m. It's an opportunity to understand how transit going through Brighton and out into the rest of the region will be changing, and it's an opportunity to ask questions and really find out how Brighton will be affected by what appears to be some reduction in service and perhaps a misunderstanding of how transit-interested residents of Brighton will be dissuaded from using public transit that we collectively
And
fund.
there's no appearance about it. The current so-called Reimagine RTS is much closer to a nightmare than to a dream. And if RTS is going to continue to serve this community, that plan has to change. We are not in one of those mobility zones. We're supposed to be in an area that is supposed to be getting a high level of service. All of the area within what used to be called the outer loop inside 395-90, they say they're going to treat as a densely populated urban sort of area. And you go down, streets like Monroe, and what you see is exactly that. Commercial with residential properties in large numbers nearby. We go down Elmwood, and you have important destinations like this, like the 12 Corners, and obviously ultimately heading towards the university. And instead of recognizing all those things and doing what the preamble to their plan says they're going to do and increase service and be aspirational and shoot for 15-minute service, which would be service levels that would encourage people to take the bus. No, they're cutting service, they're eliminating lines. So when you get out to these mobility zones, and I'm still a little uncertain even there, there's an awful lot. It's a quasi-privatization scheme that they're pushing on us. And yes, it's important, and we'll continue to advocate to our state elected officials for more funding for transit in upstate New York, and my understanding is that's coming. But I got a call on RTS. You're dropping the ball with this plan. This plan does not work for Brighton. I've said so to you. I know others have said so to you. It's got to be better, or we're going to have a bus system that simply doesn't serve us at a time when we know that bus service is more important than ever, whether it's to address poverty and other issues in the community, getting people to jobs, whether it's addressing sustainability, which we all know is one of our core values in Brighton. We need transit service originating in Brighton, going through Brighton, that is frequent enough to be useful. We really marginally have that today. If the Reimagine nightmare goes through, we will have even worse than we have today. So I really want to encourage people to go to those sessions, to go to the RTS webpage, and to let them know, particularly those of you that do rely, whether it's every day or whether it's simply periodically, you're not going to have anywhere close to the same level of service if that plan goes through. So thank you for keeping an eye on it.
I would add to the sentiment coming from RTS at this point regarding Brighton and similar communities is that the residents of this town have options, and the assumption is that every resident here has access to a personal vehicle, and therefore there is no need for riding the bus. This is circular reasoning. We have a community that is interested in being greener, being sustainable, being able to age in place, being accessible to people of all abilities, and the presumption that the tax one pays to live in Brighton or similar communities is ownership of a vehicle is inappropriate and
It's wrong,
unrealistic.
too.
Right,
I
it's
mean,
absolutely wrong.
obviously, there are lots of
And-
households with more adult driving age, working age people than they have vehicles. And
Exactly.
transit
And the
is
Imagine
important
Plan
to those folks.
shows very little in the way of attracting new riders. And I can't imagine any business that does not have a plan for attracting new customers, yet this
Yeah,
clearly does not. So,
yeah, it's not good. Thank you.
thank you.
Anything else? Then can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember DePazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilt?
Aye.
Councilmember Corrado?
Aye.
Supervisor Bailey?
Aye, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Judy, for sticking it out. And next meeting will be March 13th at 7 p.m. Have a great night, everybody. Stay safe.